I'll give you 30 seconds or so to write your names and where you're from. Okay, so I can see we've got Erica from Hillcrest School in Durban, South Africa. Looks like we have, oh, we've got Susanna also from South Africa. Nehru from Jan Mandir Public School. Earlier I saw we had Raminda from India, Sudeep from Nepal, Parminder Arora from JKG International School in India. Plenty of teachers today logging in from India. Nonto from South Africa. Hi, Nonto. Okay, well, thank you to everybody who introduced themselves. And this is basically how we're going to work for now. I'll often ask questions, and it'd be great if you can use the chat box to give your answers. And then from time to time, I'll invite some people to share their thoughts with the rest of the group. But for now, let's look at what we'll be covering today. So the duration of the webinar is approximately 1 hour. That'll depend a little bit on how chatty you are, but I'll try and keep it to about 1 hour. And we'll be looking, as you know, at the growth mindset. That's the main topic today. We'll be looking at what it is and why it's important. We'll also be looking at the learning journey. And within that, we'll be looking at metacognition. So we'll be looking at what metacognition is, how it links to the growth mindset, and we'll be looking particularly at why reflection is so important. Reflecting on learning is so important to develop a growth mindset. Then I'll be sharing a practical tool which you can use directly with your students, and then I'll be sharing another tool. And I think this is something that's very important. The focus of today's session is going to be quite practical. So I'll only be giving you a brief overview of the theory, and I'll be focusing mainly on the practical tools. Finally, right at the end, we'll be looking at the School Enterprise Challenge, and we'll be tying it all up by exploring how it can help young people to develop a growth mindset, which is today's main topic. So, as I mentioned in my communications before the webinar, all participants will receive an attendance certificate when they complete the post-webinar survey. So this will be sent to you after the webinar. And presentation slide and a list of resources will also be shared after the webinar. I hope that sounds good to you. Okay, so as you know, today's webinar is all about the growth mindset and how it can help young people become more resilient. Using the chat section once again to know, have any of you heard of the growth mindset before? Maybe you can just write yes or no in the chat box. I'll give you 15 or 20 seconds. Okay, already a few of you are saying yes. We've got a no here, a couple of no's. Okay, a few more no's. Oh, somebody says it's been a theme used in their school. That's great. Raminda, who I know well, of course, she knows, yes. Divya knows. Okay, so that's great. Some of us have heard about the growth mindset, and for some of us it will be completely new. Not to worry, I'll take it from the very beginning. My next question for you is, did any of you have a chance to watch Carol Dweck's video about the growth mindset? The one I shared before the webinar, and which was in the description of the event. Maybe you can type in the chat box letting me know if you watched the video or not. Okay, a few of you watched the video. Okay, so if you haven't watched the video, don't worry. Again, it's not a problem. It was completely optional. I can see Sudeep says, yes, it was amazing. So Sudeep, would you mind just coming off mute and maybe telling the rest of the group very briefly, you know, what was the video about? What did you take from it?
Hello everyone. The video was about psychological teacher. Something was telling about the growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and it's about how do you promote a child to grow. So it's like a growth mindset is always like they love challenges, they understand that their abilities could be developed, and it's more about developing the power of yet. While the students with fixed mindset, they tend they run away from difficulties. They cheat rather than study or rather than achieving their goal, and they find someone worse to compare. So basically the video was about how to help your child learn, grow, and thrive. So it's about more about like if you praise someone, if you effort, like praise their effort, focus on the improvement, the strategy. So that helps to develop that helps to develop the growth mindset in your children's. Thank you.
That's absolutely right. Thank you, Sudeep. I think you've explained it really, really well. So yes, it's the growth mindset is a theory by Carol Dweck, who's an award-winning psychologist, and she argues that there are basically two types of learning mindset. So the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. So let's have a look at what both of these mindsets are. Learners with a fixed mindset, you know, they believe that their intelligence and their ability and their talents are very fixed traits. Whereas learners with a growth mindset, they believe that their intelligence, their ability, and their talents can be developed through effort and through hard work. And I really like the bit you picked up on, Sudeep, the power of yet. So for those of you that haven't watched the video, Carol talks about the word yet being very important because maybe a student doesn't know how to do something yet. You know, they don't know how to do it right now, but in the future they can grow to be able to do it. Whereas that's a growth mindset student. A fixed mindset student will just think they can't do it and they'll never be able to do it. So yes, so far you can see it's quite straightforward. At the end of this presentation, I've included some links to Carol Dweck's video, but also to some of her other works. So you can read about it in more detail if you're interested. But right now, I want to look at why mindset is important. So let's consider two students who have been given the same activity. You know, this is an activity which is appropriate for their abilities, but it's also a little bit challenging. It's designed to stretch them. So here we have student number one, and this student has a fixed mindset. So they start the activity with enthusiasm. You know, she's good at this sort of work normally, and she values her reputation as someone who gets things right the first time. However, in this case, she's finding this activity very tough, and she quickly becomes frustrated, and she worries that people will think she's stupid. You know, she tells her classmate that the task is boring and she disengages from it. She might even start causing trouble in the classroom as some sort of distraction. On the other hand, we have a growth mindset student. Now, he also starts the activity with enthusiasm, and he also finds it tough, but his intellectual ability is stimulated. And while his first attempts, you know, don't succeed, he laughs, he tries a new strategy, and he engages his classmates in task-focused discussion. So he talks to his classmates about the task at hand. He doesn't cause disruption. He wants to maybe collaboratively sort out this task. You know, he shows curiosity and he makes steady progress with the task. So we have our two students here, and I want us to break down how each of them have approached the same activity. So for each one, we're going to look at their mindset, what their priority is, what they look for, what they avoid, and what they do when things get tough. Now, bear in mind that the following table is, hugely simplified, for the purpose of this exercise, but it does give you a good idea of how these two students, different learners, might approach the same activity. So let's look at the student with a fixed mindset. Her priority is to show that she's intelligent. She looks for easy successes, and she wants fewer competitors in the classroom. She probably avoids challenges. She avoids higher performing peers. So like Sudeep said, she might look for people who are worse than her at this activity. And when things get tough, she might get frustrated. She might walk away from the task, or she might cheat to appear like she can do it. Now let's look at how that differs from the growth mindset student. The growth mindset student, as we said, believes that intelligence is grown and their priority is improving their learning. They believe that they can improve it, and they look for challenges. They associate themselves with smart friends and opportunities to learn. They avoid tasks and challenges that they've already mastered because maybe it's not the best use of their time. They'd rather tackle something new and exciting and challenging. And when things get tough, they try harder, they revise their strategy, they show real resilience, creativity, and grit, and they become a better learner. So that's a very broad simplification of how a fixed and a growth mindset student might approach the same activity. You're all teachers here in this webinar, so I'm sure while I was describing these students, maybe you were able to identify some of your own students in these examples. I'm not suggesting the learners are either completely fixed or completely growth mindset. We all have a mixture of both, but I think it's important to know this concept because the work of Carol Dweck and other mindset researchers has shown that people with a growth mindset are much more likely to succeed because they learn from others, they learn from mistakes, they attribute their own efforts rather than trying to blame other people. We won't spend too much time discussing all the research into growth mindset because we only have an hour and there's so much about it on the internet already. I'll send you some links after another video, this time by Angela Duckworth, talks about grit and resilience, which feeds into the growth mindset, and I think she explains it beautifully, much better than I can. But just to sum up, at Teach a Man to Fish, we think it's important to understand the growth mindset because it's an integral part of learning to be resilient, which is what this webinar series is all about. And we think it's the basis of a learning journey. So let's look at that next. So Teach a Man to Fish, we promote experiential learning through the platform of a school-based business. As I mentioned, the School Enterprise Challenge. Participants get to plan, set up a real business. We think this is a great learning experience because, like you, we know that learning is not just a linear process. It's not straightforward. It's actually quite messy. And here's how we view the learning process. So you can see at the bottom, there's some trying, then some failing, then some trying again, then some struggling, relearning, encountering obstacles, overcoming obstacles, succeeding, and continuing to learn. You can see these steps on the ladder here on the left. And, although this is a straight ladder, a linear ladder, the process of learning and moving forward is not. Often the steps are repeated, Students have to learn and relearn things, and that's okay because it contributes to better learning. And I've summed it up here on the left. Learning is messy. It's not a linear process. Learning involves struggles and relearning. I hope you're following me so far. And I want to look back at the diagram. What else is alongside growth mindset? At the bottom of the learning journey, we have metacognition. So we've already discussed growth mindset. Now I want to ask you, you can use the chat box to let me know, has anybody heard of metacognition before? Please let me know in the chat section. I'll give you 30 seconds or so to just type your experience of metacognition. Okay, Susanna says yes, and we have a teacher from Nigeria saying yes. Okay, India hasn't heard of metacognition before. That's absolutely fine. As you can imagine, we're going to go through it together shortly. A few more yeses coming in, but also a few people who aren't familiar with metacognition. That's absolutely fine. So let's have a look at metacognition together. So metacognition, its official definition is awareness and understanding of one's own thought processes. I'll say that one more time. It's awareness and understanding of one's own thought processes. Well, put more simply, it's thinking about thinking, or having a conscious approach to thinking. Now, many people, teachers and parents included, often complain that young people are not good problems. But how often do we as educators actually create an environment for them to do this? If we want to create problem solvers, we need to stop offering up all the answers. Now, let's look at what a metacognitive student might say. Instead of, I got an A in the test, they might say, XYZ contributed to my success in the test. XYZ might be a variety of things, and the outcome is the same. You know, in this case, getting an A in the test. But, you know, some students might just think about the A, whereas a metacognitive student will think about the XYZ which went into getting the A. And we think that that's very important, not just being focused on the result, but also thinking about what got them there. And in this case, that's reflecting on their learning. You can see that reflecting on one's learning and understanding the thought process is an essential part of a learning journey. Let's look back at the diagram. It's here at the bottom alongside growth mindset. So we can say growth mindset and metacognition together are the foundations of a learning journey. Now, why is reflection so important? Which encapsulates it perfectly, and I'm going to bring it up on screen now. We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience. This is a quote by John Dewey, who's a philosopher, psychologist, and education reformer. And I really, you know, people say, you know, oh, we learn from experience, and oh, you know, you've made that mistake once, you won't make it again. And I'm with John Dewey. That's just not true. We don't just learn from experience, or rather, I think a certain amount of learning happens from experience, but actually more learning comes from reflecting on the experience. So in the rest of this webinar, I'm going to share two very practical tools that are important to the development of a growth mindset. And these tools focus on the development of reflection skills, both of students and of teachers. This process of reflecting on learning is especially important when doing practical projects, such as working on a school business, for example, the School Enterprise Challenge. And as we discussed already, learning is not linear. It's a messy thing. You know, things are not always clear from the start, especially in a school business. For those of you taking part, you'll know that. And it's really important to take the time to regularly reflect on learning and experiences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly introduce the two tools, and after each we can discuss them as a group, because I think it would be really interesting to hear your experience as educators and to reflect, because as we know, we learn from reflecting. So the first activity, the first practical tool I'll be sharing with you is called Student Thinking Journals. So before I explain any further, I want to know, do any of you here today keep a journal, whether it's personal or professional? Do you do any kind of journaling or diary keeping? You can let me know in the chat box. I'll give everyone about 20-30 seconds to let me know if they do any journaling or have a diary. Go ahead. Okay, a few yeses coming in already. Okay, one of the teachers here, EB, has a personal diary. Okay, we have someone here who keeps one to record student activities. Okay, Susanna's never kept a journal. Nonto does. Sonali does. Okay, we have somebody here, excuse my pronunciation, Tabiso Mabaso, who keeps a work and a personal journal. Would that person be willing to share, to come off mute and maybe share with the group a little bit about sharing, keeping a journal? Tabiso, are you, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, so maybe they're not recognizing themselves. Are you able to come off mute and maybe share your experience with the group of keeping a journal? Oh, I think you're still on mute.
Yes, now I'm on now.
Oh, here you are.
Yes, yes.
You're on now. Okay, tell us about your experience with journals.
You know what normally happens if for the control of the work, well, that for instance, if learners they do not, like I give them work and they do not do the work, I have everything in writing, so that just in case, you know, for instance, if they're lacking in the marks, and I go back to my journal and reflect as to what really happened during the year or during that period, and also for my personal as well.
Okay, so you keep a track of what's happened, and you said you use it for reflection. Is it quite factual, or do you write how you feel, or do you write kind of learnings in there? What do you have any kind of detail, or is it just bullet points, or how does it look?
What happens is, for each and every learner, I have the page, and I write, like for instance, for each and every month, rather. That's what I do. I have everything in writing as to how the learner has been performing, like for instance, in doing their homeworks, and that after, so that I can be able to report to their parents.
Fabulous. Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing with us all. So I'm sure we can all give you a clap. Thank you very much. And okay, so I'm going to go on and tell you a little bit about student thinking journals and how we can do that. So I, just to let you know personally, you know, I've tried to keep journals throughout my life, and I found it quite difficult, and I made it my resolution this year in 2020 to keep a personal journal about my personal life. It's been a you know, really good. I found it amazingly enriching and rewarding, and that's why I wanted to bring this activity here today. So let's look at how you can do the activity with your students. We're going to look at the duration of this little project, and we're going to look at the duration of the initial exercise you'll need to do to set it. We'll also look at the equipment needed, and then we'll run through the instructions for you as a teacher. So, first one, duration of a project, it's up to you. So, as you can imagine, we're going to get students to keep a journal. The period of time is up to you and what you're able to do. So, it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a term. I think 1 year would be amazing. The longer you do it for, probably the better the impact, the bigger the impact. So this initial exercise, which we'll run through, you can do with them easily, in under an hour, maybe even 30 minutes. So I don't think you need to dedicate a whole lesson, maybe in between periods, it can be done. Equipment is quite minimal. All the student will need is a pen, a notebook or a piece of paper, and the metacognition survey questions, which I'll be sharing with you and you can pass on to them. If, any of these things are a challenge, there's other ways of doing it, and I'll describe those when we're running through. So, first step is for the teacher to explain what metacognition is to the students. You can do this in any way that you like, because you know your students better than anyone. So, let's refresh our memory. Metacognition, officially, it's the awareness and understanding of one's own thought processes. But put more simply, it's thinking about thinking. It's having a conscious approach to thinking. I'm sure you all teach very different types of students, younger ones, older ones, more able ones, whatever. It's up to you how you explain metacognition to your students. And once you've explained it, I encourage you to check understanding. Find out, did they really get it? And, give them some praise. So once you've explained and checked the understanding of metacognition, you can share the metacognitive survey. I'm going to share this with you now. It can be adapted in any way you like. This is just an example. So, for example, describe a time you felt frustrated by something new. What do you do when you don't understand something? How do you connect new information to things you already know? Describe how you feel when you learn something new. Did you have any challenges in today's learning? How did you overcome those challenges? What could you have done better to improve your learning today? These are just 6 examples from a book called The Growth Mindset Playbook, A Teacher's Guide to Promoting Student Success. It's by Annie Brock and Heather Hundley. It's a fantastic book. I read most of it to put this presentation together, and there's a link at the end of the presentation where you can find it on Google Books, and you can read a preview and you can buy it from there. As I said, you don't need to use these exact questions. You can adapt them for your students. So my recommendation to you is to get students to discuss some of these questions or all of these questions, or maybe just one, in pairs, and then to present them to the group. I think it's a really nice way to share with their peers. And I think it's nice if you, the teacher, at the front of the class, you can be at the board and you can be keeping a master list of all the answers which are being given. Because I think you'll see that a lot of the answers are the same and many answers are different. And I think it's really important for you to emphasize this to the students, for them to see that we all learn in different ways. And I think you should celebrate the similarities and you should celebrate the differences, and that will really hopefully make the students understand that they're very unique, but they do also have things in common with their peers and how they learn. So next up, you need to ask students to pull out their notebooks or their pen or however you're doing this activity, and you can set the personal assignment, which is creating a thinking self-portrait. So this is where they'll keep track of sorry, you might want to use an instruction like draw a picture of yourself which explains how you think and learn best. You can use images and or words and be as creative as you like. So you might be wondering what a thinking self-portrait looks like. I've put an example here. Once again, it's from the Growth Mindset Playbook. You know, I would be reluctant to share it with students because I would want to give them as much room for creativity as they can. You know, it doesn't need to look like this. This is just an example, but let's run through it together. So clearly, this is a young girl, and she's put a nice My Thinking journal at the top, and she's reflected on a few things. So she's written, headphones and earmuffs are my friends, I need quiet. So she's acknowledged that she learns better in a calm and quiet environment. And she's put an arrow to her forehead saying, use my memory, I practice to save knowledge in my brain. Making notes while I read helps me. She's also pointed to her mouth and she's put, I heart to talk through over with a friend. So she's acknowledged that, you know, she likes silence at first when she's taking it in, but once she's maybe grasped a concept, she needs to say it out loud just to check it with herself and check it with a friend. She likes to take notes, as we said, and this one I really like. Towards her heart, she's pointed, remember to ask questions when I don't get it. So that's a really nice little reminder to herself, and she's put a great little nugget of information. Questions equals learning. Have courage to say when I don't know. I think that's great. I think she's clearly a very self-aware student. I would say she's quite metacognitive. If you do this activity with your students, don't worry if they don't come out with something as detailed as this. This is just an example, but you can see what it might look like. Now, my suggestion to you, and it's up to you how you do this, this can be done in class as part of a session, or it can be set as homework. We all know that some students maybe work better from home. They might be more creative there. So it's up to you how you set it. And another thing I wanted to bring to your attention is there are variations of this activity. So if, you know, maybe student doesn't have access to a notebook or a pen, or maybe they really don't like writing at all, you can do it acting rather than drawing. That's a suggestion which I had from a fellow colleague, and I think is a really nice one. Okay, so that's the initial activity that you need to do to set students off on their thinking journals. And then during the project, and as we said, it can go on for any period of time, a week, a month, a year, students need to keep track of their learning in their thinking journal using phrases like this, potentially. I know I'm learning when, this reminds me of, I'm feeling, I'm curious if, you know, there are many more like I'm wondering. So if, you know, students find it hard to keep track of their learning and reflecting on it, you can give them these sentences as a starting point and just get them to think about what they learned that day or that week or that month and how it made them feel, you know, what it reminded them of. And that's during the project, and then at the end of the project, whenever that might be, you might want to get the students to draw another thinking self-portrait. And once they've done that, they might want to compare it. Oh, sorry. They might want to compare it with the original self-portrait. So that was the practical tool number 1, the student thinking journals. I'd like us to very briefly discuss it as a group. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds, maybe a little bit longer, to just post in the chat and tell me, you know, what do you think of a student thinking journal? Might you be able to use it with your students? Do you think it might be challenging, or do you think it will be easy? Just tell me what your first impressions of this tool are. I'll give you 30 seconds. Okay, Gunpreet says they will find it interesting. I think it will be successful with my students who like using journals. Great. EB says only some will find it interesting. I think that's a very, very good point to make. And again, I'm just introducing the tool to you. It's very, you know, take it or leave it. It's up to you if you do this with your students. And as I said, every single part of it can be adapted. Nobody knows your learners better than you do. So don't feel like you need to follow exactly what's in the presentation. You can certainly adapt it. Oh, there's a comment here I really like. It will give them an opportunity for self-awareness. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. Sudeep says, it's a really nice way of keeping track of your own awareness. Someone says high school learners don't always like to discuss their feelings about things. Absolutely. I've experienced that with many, especially teenagers. And I remember when I was a teenager, I definitely didn't like talking about how I was feeling. So I think from the teacher's point of view, you will need to make a decision whether you want to do this tool with them or not. Is it because they don't like doing it a good reason to not do it? I don't know. Maybe you just need to frame it in a way where they understand how beneficial it's going to be. Okay, so that was tool number 1, and we're already 40 minutes in, so I'd quite like to move on to tool number 2, if that's possible. The second practical tool relating to growth mindset, which we'll be looking at briefly today, you can probably guess what it is. It's the teacher reflection journal. So, you know, we've explored how we might get students to keep a journal. Now I want to have a very brief look at how teachers can keep a reflection journal. And we'll be looking at how you, as a teacher, create a happy and collaborative classroom. Because in a collaborative classroom with growth mindset at its core, everyone feels empowered to use their strengths and develop their weaknesses, which is everything we're talking about today. So, you know, same, you can use a piece of paper and a pen, or you can record it into your phone. It's up to you how you want to do it. And I'm just going to suggest 3 questions which you might want to ask yourself and reflect on. Question 1 is, in what ways do I provide students an opportunity to build relationships and connect with one another in a collaborative spirit? Question number 2, do my students understand how each learner begins in their own special place and moves at their own pace towards their individual goals? And finally, how can I teach them to encourage one another in their development and growth? Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You know, we said it earlier, some teenagers don't like reflecting on their feelings. Some adults don't like reflecting on their feelings. So again, it's up to you whether you want to take on board this tool. Having started a journal myself this year, you know, I started on the 1st of January. I found it very difficult at first. I found it awkward. awkward. And, you know, when I read back to those first few weeks, it's a little bit, I don't know, a little bit difficult. But in the last few months, you know, by the time I got to February, March, and now April, I'm really enjoying it. I'm finding it really rewarding. And I love looking back at what I wrote 1 month ago, 2 months ago. And I hope that, you know, you won't dismiss this tool. You'll hopefully give it a go and see what kind of results it can bring from you, because it is, you know, it's also from the growth mindset playbook, and it's specifically designed to help teachers be more reflective about their teaching, and in turn support students to be more reflective about their learning, which we know can help them develop growth mindset. So again, I'm going to give you 20 or 30 seconds to just write in the chat bar. I would love to know who is with me, who is willing to try the teacher reflection journal, even just for 1 week. Okay, already we have 2 people who have said they will do it. Somebody says, I would love to try. Somebody says, we have a lot to explore during lockdown. Absolutely. I would say, you know, journaling is an ideal activity for lockdown. My diary entries have certainly gotten better and more precise, more in depth, simply because you know, I'm not physically traveling into work every day, so I have more time. And I think the more detail I go into, the more value I'm taking away from the journal. Okay, I'm seeing lots of really positive responses. Lots of you saying you're gonna try the teacher reflection journal, and lots of people as well said they would try the learning journal with their students, which I'm really, really pleased to hear. Again, you don't have to, but it's just a recommendation. Okay, so that was practical tool number 2. And you know, if we think back to our learning objectives for this webinar, we said we would learn about the growth mindset, what it is and why it's important. We've done that. We said we would look at the learning journey. We briefly looked at the ladder together, and we saw growth mindset and metacognition at the foundation. We said we would explore metacognition, what it is, how it relates to growth mindset. We've done that. And then I said I would focus on 2 very practical tools. The first one was the student learning journal. The second one was the teacher reflection journal. So I think you can see we're doing very well against our webinar sort of learning objectives. All that's left now is to talk about the School Enterprise Challenge and how we can help young people to develop a growth mindset. So, you know, before I launch too much into the School Enterprise Challenge, I know some of you are taking part. Maybe some of you have never heard of it. So please, can you tell me in the chat, you know, do you know the School Enterprise Challenge, and what's your experience? I'll give you 30 seconds or so. And I also can see someone is asking questions. Yes, we'll have time for questions just after this slide. I'll open up for discussion, and we can all contribute. So thank you very much for reminding me of that. Okay, so a few people are saying, yes, School Enterprise Challenge is a great learning experience. It's been awesome. Has anybody else heard of it? You know, and please let me know if you've never heard of it. Just type in the bar, letting me know. I just want to get a feel for what our knowledge of the School Enterprise Challenge is. Okay, we have Raminda. Raminda, you know, she's a START School Enterprise Challenge teacher. She's been taking part for the last 6 years. She's on our teacher advisory panel. and she says it's equipped her students with 21st century skills. We have a principal here who says we're in the gold level of the School Enterprise Challenge. Our students have thoroughly enjoyed the experience. Yes, we have a team at Greenie G Mini Mart in Nigeria being represented. Lots of thumbs up coming through. Somebody here, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the name, but they say it's great. It assists learners to do practical things and what they learn in business studies. Great. So lots of people have heard of the School Enterprise Challenge. Many of you are taking part in it. I'm just going to talk about it very briefly. The School Enterprise Challenge is a free educational program which is offered by us at Teach a Man to Fish. As I said earlier, the participants, who are students and teachers, you know, students and teachers go on a journey together. They go on an entrepreneurial journey. What does that look like? Well, coming up with a business idea, writing a business plan, and then finally launching and running a real business. We're very, very proud of the School Enterprise Challenge, our STAR program, and we think it's a great platform for developing a growth mindset and reflective skills, because you know it offers a completely new experience which many students will never have encountered before. They would never have the opportunity to do something like this inside the classroom. With the School Enterprise Challenge, they get out, they go out into the community, and you know, for those of you that have done it, we know it's not easy, and that's the whole point. With it comes, you know, challenges, setbacks, even some failures, and students have to reflect, to push through those and to learn and to succeed. And I know that, you know, I recognize a lot of the names coming up on the side of my screen. Many of you have been taking part for years, and I'm sure now you're absolutely, you know, loving the educational gains it's bringing. But at the beginning, it was difficult, and it involves making mistakes, and it was designed specifically with that in mind, because that's how you develop a growth mindset. So I'm not gonna go into much more detail than that. I've put our website here. You can click on there and you can find out all about it. There's plenty of information on the website. Just so you know, obviously, because of COVID, many schools around the world are closed and, you know, are not able to take part right now. However, we've decided to keep registration open. So if you're not already registered, you can register. If you are registered, your account is still active. You can log in and you can go and consume all the educational materials, and you can maybe use this lockdown period to study it a little bit more, so that when schools reopen, you can hit the ground running again. For those of you which are in our School Enterprise Challenge WhatsApp groups, we're even sharing some optional activities which you can pass on to your students. So please make sure you check those out, and if you think they're valuable, please pass them on to your students. Okay, so that's all about the School Enterprise Challenge. There's going to be time for questions in a moment. Actually, no, let's do questions now. So don't go off mute, but please just in the chat box type any question that you have, and I'll invite people to maybe come in and contribute. Okay, Paula says, I'm not presenting anymore. It looks like somebody has clicked on the present button and has overridden my presentation. I'm not sure who that is. Can I just kindly ask that nobody is presenting while I'm presenting, please? And if Paula, can you let me know if my screen comes back? That would be great. I should hopefully be presenting again now. Okay, yeah, Paula says it's come back. Thank you very much for flagging that, Paula. I appreciate your help. Okay, let me look through the questions. To integrate the growth mindset concept during lessons. So yes, absolutely it's possible. So the two tools I shared with you are designed exactly to do that. So, you know, for me, the way I look at it, the student journal is the very first step into introducing the growth mindset, because you explain to students what metacognition is. And we know the metacognition is really closely linked to growth mindset. Many young people will not have thought about thinking, you know, that's not necessarily a natural concept. So already, just by introducing the term and the concept of metacognition, you'll be planting that seed of thinking about thinking. Then, by introducing the metacognitive survey, what will they do? They will think about their learning already. That's beginning to be metacognitive, and it's setting off on a growth mindset journey. Then keeping the journal for whatever period of time, I think will really help them develop a growth mindset, because they'll be reflecting on their learning. And there are many more activities which you can do. And that's why I've linked you. You'll see in a couple of slides time, I've linked you to the growth mindset playbook. You can buy it on Google. And from there are loads of wonderful exercises which are very practical and will help develop a growth mindset. The other thing you can do to get your students to develop a growth mindset is you can get them to take part in the School Enterprise Challenge. It's designed particularly with this in mind. Okay, let's see if there's any more questions. And who went from 0 to hero using metacognition. I don't have an example to hand, like a specific person, but later on the next slide, I do link you to the work of Carol Dweck and Angela Duckworth. And Angela Duckworth has done so much research into what she calls grit, which is basically resilience. Resilience is the topic of this webinar series. She explains it beautifully, and she has so many examples. She studied all kinds of learners, you know, young, old, children, adults, you know, very wealthy, not so wealthy, rural, urban, and she has collected so much data, and she says that students with a growth mindset are so much more likely to succeed. So if you want to find out about case studies of 0 to 0, I recommend you check out Angela Duckworth. Okay, I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to invite Vinita to talk to the rest of the group, because she's kindly offered experience. But first, I'll take this question. What could the block to growth mindset be? Okay, it's a very, very good question. And I think I'd like to invite Vinita to tell us about her experience, and maybe in your presentation, can you suggest from your point of view what could be a block to growth mindset? Vinita, I invite you to come off mute and talk to the group.
Hello. Yeah, hello everyone. Hope you all are doing well, and it was great, Christophe, for this this presentation and everything. I would like to share from the business that we run of Herbs and Cures. I remember, she will be an alumni now. She used to feel very shy, and she used to feel that she cannot communicate well, and we gave her the duty of in selling department, and she used to sell the products. You know, slowly and steadily she came out of her shell that she could discuss, and then she sold her things, and she became so confident, and ultimately she now heads our Herbs and Cures team, and now she trains others. So, I think nobody is zero. I mean, we say 0 to hero, but nobody is zero. Everybody has the potential. And it's only that if we motivate the child, if we give them the exposure, they are capable of doing wonders. So this is the girl. There is a girl. She's the head of our team. And, if you see, she's so confidently. And earlier she was very shy. and she used to feel that she's a little heavy, so maybe she will not be able to, but she has come out of every inhibitions, and she participates in debates also, and in other areas also she's participating and she's excelling. So the School Enterprise Challenge, this business that we just started off, to be a participant in School Enterprise Challenge, and over 3-4 years, she could groom herself so much and present herself confidently by just being a member of a sales team. Slowly and steadily she came out of the shell, and she really, she's really doing wonders. God really bless her. This is just one example. I'm sure everybody from School Enterprise Challenge team, those who participate, they must be having many. This is what I would share. So I think that block to growth mindset is, we ourselves. If we motivate the children, if we tell them that yes, they can do it, every effort gives the result. An honest effort will always give the result. I think that is what we need to tell the children. Just that there should not be any lacking in their effort. Practice makes a man perfect, as they say. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vanita. Just to give everyone some background, Vanita's been taking part in the School Enterprise Challenge for a long time, and her students have set up a wonderful business called Herbs and Cures. And I'm so glad I brought her up to tell you about the experience, because I think she's not only given a great example, she's perfectly explained what the barrier to growth mindset could be. She said, nobody is zero. So, when we're asking for hero to zero, thinking that you are zero at the beginning is in itself the barrier to the growth mindset. So it's our role as educators, your role as teachers, to make students realize that they're not starting from zero, first of all, and that they are not fixed where they are at currently. That's very, very important.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vanita. Okay. I'm conscious that we have gone slightly over time. Some people have started leaving the meeting. I'm sure you have places to be. So I just very briefly want to wrap up. And if you have any questions afterwards, you'll be able to get in touch with me. I'll share my contact details. So I hope you can see my presentation, and I've included some useful resources for you. I've included the video by Carol Dweck, and I've also included the video by Angela Duckworth, which I just mentioned now, and I think it's a lovely video. Please go ahead and watch it. You can read about Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset in more detail on her Wikipedia page and on the Mindset Works website, which has loads of growth mindset resources there ready to download. I wanted to let you know that many of the examples given in this presentation are inspired from the book, The Growth Mindset Playbook, A Teacher's Guide to Promoting Student Success. It's a great book. You can preview it and you can buy it on Google Books. I've put the link for you there. And I also wanted to share a great blog about metacognition from the Edutopia website. It's called Metacognition, the gift that keeps giving. If you're interested in metacognition, it goes into much more detail than I did today. And I wanted to bring to your attention the section, how to teach students to be more metacognitive. So if you want a very practical activity, just go to that blog and scroll down a little bit. Now, I promised you all an attendance certificate. So you need to do something for me first, and then I will provide you with a certificate. So please, please, please take the survey. It takes less than 5 minutes. It helps us improve our webinars for the future. And at the end, you'll have a link where you can download your certificate. The certificate is created in Word, so you can type your own name in the middle. So it looks very official, and it has all our branding on it. And it says that you attended webinar number 1. Introduction to Growth Mindset. And if you want to get more certificates like these, all you need to do is attend the other webinars and fill out the survey each time. The last thing I want to say before I let you go, sorry, thank you. Someone's asked, how do we get the survey? It will be sent to you. After this, and I can pop it. In fact, I can put it in I can put it in the chat now, if you give me one moment. Okay. Allow me to type it here. There you go. And I will send it around anyway on WhatsApp and by email, etc. Oh no, sorry, that was the wrong button. Sorry. The last thing I wanted to do is encourage you to stay connected with us. So as I said, we are Teach a Man to Fish. You have our website, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, and our email. And then you have the same information there at the bottom for the School Enterprise Challenge. We'd love to hear from you, particularly if what you learned today impacted you in a positive way. Let us know. We'd be very, very happy to hear from you. So yeah, that's it from me today and from us at Teach a Man to Fish. Thank you very, very much for your time. I'm sorry I went a little bit over, but I think we had a really wonderful and enriching conversation, and I hope we can continue it into the future. And as soon as webinar number 2 is scheduled, I'll let you know, and you'll be the first to be invited. Thank you, and bye-bye.